30 minutes of Captain Kirk Kelly is enough, and it starts right now. Hope you're doing well. Today on The Big Shoe, we're going to talk about the Iranian war and why it's inevitable. That's right. That's why the United States government is preparing. They have already voted approval to attack Iran at any time, any moment, anywhere. And here is why, okay? The United States says that they have been sanctioning Iran since 1979, and since the Ayatollah Khomeini took over power when we had the big hostage takeover of our embassy, when the hostages were taken by Iranian students. Now, today we're going to talk about what the United States' involvement with Iran has been in its past and why things have gotten to where they are today. Now, since 1979, since Ayatollah Khomeini took over the power and they overthrew the Shah in that government, Iran has cut off economic relations with the United States. It has not been the other way around. The United States did not cut off any kind of economic support with them. Iran did not accept any further communications or contact with the United States since 1979. Now, this has been just an absolute cover-up by the United States government. Now, the biggest thing that Obama says that they are doing now is they are in their sanction program trying to get Russia and China to not purchase oil from Iran anymore. Now, if you stood in Iran and you understood, are these sanctions working? Are they really, like the media says, falling apart at the seams? Evidence of the true people that live in Iran say no. The media is making this up. Now, Iran is Russia and China's major oil supplier. And since 1979, when they took over their own oil system and got rid of BP, got rid of the British Petroleum, got rid of all the other OPEC countries and their relations with them, Iran has been selling exclusively to China and Russia. And they make more money today than they ever made when the oil companies ran their petroleum reserves. You must first understand why the United States goes to war. There is usually a cover-up or a conspiracy, or they are either for strategic movement or locations that hold our position in obtaining a resource from a country that we are trying to steal the resource from. Now, the United States only takes offensive military action against countries that have resources, or majorly oil. We might provide intelligence and weapons to countries to overthrow a non-loyal country like Syria, although we won't attack them with our military forces. And why is that? Because they don't have any oil or resources that we want to obtain. Isn't that correct? Now, when Iraq invaded Kuwait on August 4th in 1990, President George Bush Sr., he didn't hesitate for 1 second for military intervention, did he? Why? Because they were stealing our oil. The United States transported a military alliance to Iraq that is still the largest and fastest military buildup in American history. Now, Saddam Hussein then raised oil prices on America and Britain and broke off from OPEC, and it began a 20-year broken relationship with America that would one day see him hang. We all know that story, don't we? Now, when Pakistan was developing a nuclear weapon, the United States never said squat. In fact, we assisted them in building it, and the reason why was because they would become a strategic partner in the Middle East, along with Israel and along their borders with India, their enemy. This would create an alliance between them and assure them that they both had defensive ways to fight one another, so it would deter them from attacking one another. And now this is backfiring on us. When North Korea announced they were developing nuclear energy and weapons, the United States did nothing. Why? They have no oil or resources we need. Now, if we want to understand thoroughly why Iran is so important to the United States, it is because of their oil. It has been for a long time. In fact, all throughout the 20th century, there has been many conspiracies, coups, and things we will go into in a minute. But what we need to understand first and foremost is there is an organization called OPEC, and they are the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. And they were originally Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. They were founded in 1960. Today there are 12 countries listed as members, although certainly Iran and Venezuela are questionable. Iraq broke off in 1990, but since being liberated by the United States, if you want to call it that, they are now back online with OPEC. Venezuela and Iran have both nationalized their own oil exports. This is why America hates Chavez of Venezuela, because he broke off from being an OPEC player with America, so he is considered an evil man. Funny, his country is in a lot better financial shape than the United States is at this time. Can America's economy handle another war? According to the Center of Defense, by the end of 2012, Iraq and Afghanistan have cost the American taxpayer $3.7 trillion. These two wars were declared by G.W. Bush to have been completely successful about 8 years ago and $1.4 trillion ago. Iraq and Afghanistan have been the longest wars by far in American history. They have also broke the government entirely. Now, can the United States accept the death and casualty rate that it has committed against innocent civilians? The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have killed 137,000 innocent civilians, 22,000 insurgents, and 6,600 U.S. servicemen. Injured over 1 million innocent civilians and over 16,000 U.S. troops. Didn't we kill Osama bin Laden? Why are we still in Afghanistan? Now, on September 21st, 2012 at midnight, your Congress approved the measures of war on Iran. The Congress can approve the declaration of war. In fact, they don't need approval from the President. In fact, the President must have Congress approval to declare war. How the hell can we afford this war? Well, certainly the United States and her allies can technologically put a great dent in Iran's military very quickly. Iran is the Middle East's strongest military. Iran is not Iraq. Nor Afghanistan. They are well equipped with a lot more advanced military than Iraq or Afghanistan ever thought of be. This will not be a swift and destructive war. Now, according to the United States generals, General Petraeus was quoted as saying this: Iran will not be an easy foe. Now, Marine four-star General John Allen, who is in charge of all Allied forces in Afghanistan and Iraq, said this. He's quoted as saying, attacking Iran would probably start a major high-casualty conflict with possible epic proportions. Congress, would you please listen to your generals? As civilians and taxpayers who have sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, our mothers and fathers, dedicated and active in our military to protect our Constitution and our freedoms, we must understand why our elected officials want to truly go to war with Iran. We know 9/11 was tragic, although didn't President Bush send us to war against two nations who had nothing to do with 9/11? Our government completely underestimated both of these wars. Didn't Bush send us to war with Iraq on a lie of weapons of mass destruction? Now think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, the real reason Bush attacked Iraq is this. Time magazine, November 13th in 2000, page 34. Europe's dream of promoting the euro as a competitor to the U.S. dollar may get a boost from Saddam Hussein. Iraq says that from now on it wants payment for its oil in euros, despite the fact that the battered European currency unit, which used to be worth quite a bit more than the dollar, has dropped to about 82 cents. Iraq says it will no longer accept dollars for oil because it does not want to deal in currency of the enemy. If you look at all the paperwork, all the hassle, all of the currency exchange and everything in purchasing oil through Iraq, having to change it from American currency to the euro, it would have just been a major multi-billion-dollar headache, and it was cause for Bush to get ticked off and want to just absolutely get rid of Saddam Hussein at that point. Now, this was worse than anything that the Iranian leaders have ever done to the United States and her allies, especially if you consider what we have done to Iran throughout the years, and we're going to go into that right now. Now, in the early part of the 20th century, Standard Oil Company had to subsidize into different companies. They were holding a monopoly on petroleum, and the government said they were getting too rich and were holding a monopoly, so they had to break apart. Now, if you believe they actually did, well, you don't study the oil industry very well. You miss some corners that they cut. But one of the companies that came off and branched away from Standard was BP, British Petroleum. They were the major owners of Iran's oil production. And they had the leader in Iran known as the Shah, cluster-bugged. He was selling at way cheap prices his petroleum and allowing them to produce petroleum at just an unbelievable rate. And BP was getting filthy rich while Iran was not making very much money off of this. And the Shah, the original Shah of Iran, decided to nationalize his oil so that this would flip-flop and it would make them start making the money and BP would make just a percentage of what they actually should be making. Now, when he did this, the United States government decided that Iran needed to have a democratic government. They needed to have an election. And who they threw up there was a man by the name of Mohammad Mossadegh. And they used a lot of money to campaign to get Mossadegh in there to overthrow the Shah. Basically, this democratic election was rigged. And they got Mossadegh in there. And for about 5 years, Mossadegh was allowing BP back to the big profits off of Iran's petroleum. But during 1951, Mossadegh decided he too needed to nationalize oil. So Mossadegh did that. He nationalized Iran's petroleum products. And this again ticked off BP. So on August 19th, 1953, the CIA and the MI5, in a joint operation, in a covert operation, had successfully done their coup and had Mossadegh overthrown and exiled from Iran. And Iran was instilled. So what had happened was that Britain and the United States government, using their intelligence agencies, actually overthrew a democratically elected president of Iran so that they could get back control of their oil profits. So from 1953 up until about 1979, everything was going pretty smoothly in Iran, with BP getting their oil production through them. There wasn't any real outrising. But in about 1978, the Shah of Iran decided that he was going to do the same thing that the past leaders had done. But he thought he could get away with it, and he was going to try to nationalize his oil. Now, while he did this, the MI5 had decided to go in and interview him with one of their ambassadors, and he came back saying that the Shah was totally breaking up. He was having a nervous breakdown and going absolutely crazy. And he got the media to say that the Shah was losing power in Iran, and that this and that was causing him to make these decisions that he needed to nationalize his oil. So who did the MI5 bring in? Well, they brought in a man named Ruhollah Khomeini. And this was a man that was an arch enemy of the Shah. He said that the Shah had been trying to westernize Iran when the people of Iran did not want to do so. And he was one of the big church leaders of the Muslim churches within Iran. And he had been exiled 3 times by the Shah. And in fact, in 1966, publicly, the Shah slapped Ayatollah Khomeini. And Khomeini was the guy that the MI5 decided was the quickest guy they could get to power and start a revolution within Iran to overthrow the Shah. And it worked. And on November 5th, 1979, college students overtook the U.S. Embassy in Iran, in Tehran, Iran. 66 original hostages were taken, and 13 of them were released until January 20th, 1981, and the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. That same day, they released the other lasting 52 hostages. Now, since that date, when the embassy was taken by these college students, and Ayatollah Khomeini claimed power of Iran, he immediately discontinued and cut off all diplomatic relations and economic relations with the United States of America and her allies. Now, Khomeini ruled up until his death on June 3rd, 1989, and then was replaced in power by a democratically elected president named Mohammed Ahmadinejad. Now, Ahmadinejad has won 2 elections since then, as has remained in power up until this point. Now, the media makes it sound as if there's a big political turmoil going on, but those that understand what really is going on in the corruption and the cover-ups of the media's attention towards Iran has simply been put that that's all a conspiracy by the CIA or the MI5. But the truth to the matter is that Ahmadinejad says his country only wants to develop nuclear energy resources, not nuclear weapons. It is Mossad who has assured the West and the United States that they are developing a nuke, specifically to destroy Israel. Is this a reality or just another fear brought on by Israel? The United States assisted Pakistan in developing nuclear weapons, and they harbored Osama bin Laden knowingly. The USA then gave Pakistan $7.5 billion in economic aid. Now Pakistan is Iran's ally, and if we attack Iran, they very well may turn into our enemy. Now, what is America's theory on why we need to attack Iran? Weapons of mass destruction. Are you believing this lie again? Why hasn't America already attacked Iran? Because it has taken this long to get complete mind control of the people who are now convinced that Muslims are evil and we must kill them all. Apparently, it's to that point. Houston, we do have a problem. Do you see Islamic countries unifying, even with democratically influenced governments? It is not radical. It is revolution. They don't want Western influence controlling their countries for the sake of strategic control of oil. And they know this. Do you know this? It is so easy to get Americans and all the Western countries influenced about how these Middle East countries are just violent and crazy. But you don't really go back and look at what America and the Western civilized societies have done to the Middle East, all in the effect of getting their oil. That's all it has been about. If you go back between Khomeini taking over in power, Iran and Iraq went to war with each other, and the United States supplied both sides military aid so they would kill each other, so that it would be easier for them, for the United States, to get a hold of the oil. Now, fellow Americans, let's take a look at a scenario that will most likely take effect if we attack Iran. Let's step over to the map. This is the Middle East. These countries highlighted in red are all just recovering from rebellions or are currently undergoing rebellions. They are all Islamic radical countries, as the mainstream media gets you to believe. If we attack Iran, they will unite and ally with Iran. This is Israel. They have nuclear weapons, and they're going to have to use them to survive any existence against this many enemies. Common sense says this. So, even if Russia and China don't join in, this would mean there is potential for catastrophe at its highest proportions, especially if Russia and China do join into this. We will have World War III if Israel or the United States attack Iran. Guaranteed. It is inevitable, because Iran is one of the major suppliers to Russia and China's oil. And without that oil, they will have an insufficient oil supply, and it will cause a crisis within their own country. And you must also understand that former Soviet Union countries, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, all have the potential of having nuclear missiles. So this leads to just an unraveling situation in the Middle East. Now, you could be saying, Captain Kirk, you're absolutely crazy, because Afghanistan has no oil, and we've been fighting war over there for 10 years, 11 years now, and we're still over there. And I will have to answer you like this. It's lithium. A New York Times article written by James Risen on Afghanistan's mineral riches. Go read this article. Folks, I don't get caught up in conspiracy theory. I only bring you reality. We need to stop these wars for profit. If America was fiscally responsible, we could purchase our consumer needs from other countries, and it would be less expensive, and nobody would be slaughtered. So if the United States has been responsible for overthrowing Iran's government several times, we've been involved there only for the sake of oil. There is no other reason that we would be there. If it wasn't for oil, it is not a high destination vacation land. It's a bunch of sand. But it does have oil and the resources we need. And if Afghanistan has got minerals such as lithium that we need for our cell phone batteries, for rechargeable and energy products, well, that's the reason we're there, $1 trillion worth, to pay us back for our war. But was that necessary? Okay? If we look at all of what the generals say, if we look at what we are reasoning, our need to go to war with Iran for, is it worth it? We obviously know that we went into Iraq, and what did we get out of Iraq? We got our oil supply back online, but 6,600 men have been killed fighting for that. Was that for freedom? Was that for your rights as a United States citizen? No. Those people have not bothered us one bit. We have been bothering them for over a century just to get their oil. What can we do to stop this? You need to get on the phone. You need to get your letters out. You need to call your congressman. You need to start showing. We need to demonstrate, and we need to work together to stop the government from creating World War III. I'm Kirk Kelly. 30 minutes of me, baby. That's enough.